Here we go. Hey, we have a Nicholas.
Yes.
Just as we started the broadcast. Awesome. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining in. This is another panel for Free Thought Blogs Con 3. This one's called Blockbot and Other Strategies, and we are joined today by Marion. We've got Nicholas. We've got Vanguard Vivian by text, so they are not going to be able to join us audioly or visually, but they will be speaking in, giving some input on the topics under discussion. And we've got James. So my name is Brienne. I will be relaying anything that Vivian has to contribute here. Otherwise, it's all you guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much. As I said, I'm Marion. I'm one of 3 admins. Vivian is one of the other ones, and Catherine, who was busy this weekend, she's the other one. And I have to do this, everybody. Sorry. Okay, and I am member of the year for Secular Women, which was a great honor, and everybody told me I had to show this off, right? So here it is.
That is awesome.
You just wear that all the while now, do you, wherever you go?
I know. So James, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm James Billingham, and I originally wrote the Blockbot and then built up the group of blockers, I suppose, and then stepped back and got it so Marion and everybody else is running it, and me just being a techie, because that makes more sense, really. And over to Nick.
So my name's Nick Geiger. I don't know how to put my name in the bottom of the screen because I was late to joining, but I just saw people that I knew and respected on Twitter blocking people and became interested in what was going on, and I just sort of paid attention to what was happening for a sort of long period of time, and then eventually I asked if I could be a blocker, and I was like, okay, that sounds fine, and then I still didn't block anybody for a couple of months because I didn't want to do it poorly. So I looked over the Blockbot website and the guidelines and things like that, and finally started blocking and didn't have a meltdown because people weren't coming to me going, hey, you're doing this wrong. So but yeah, it's something that I feel really good about because I feel like it's a service that helps people, and it's something that I can do throughout the week while I'm working. I can assist people. It's unfortunate when we get people that suddenly have a bunch of people pile on them. That seems to be the most common reason. I generally don't go looking for people to block. It's mostly somebody with a relatively large following starts to pick a fight, and then a bunch of their followers decide to start being mean, and then I get busy for a while. So anyway, that's me.
So, Brianna, you doing the intro from Vivian?
I do not have an intro for Vivian yet.
Okay. Well, Marion, you should probably give an overview of what the Blockbot is, really, shouldn't you?
Oh, me? Okay. I was going to leave it to you to give the history of the Blockbot since you've been involved longer.
I did ask Vivian why they're involved with Blockbot, and very simply they say so they can stop online harassment. So maybe that'll help get you in there.
But yeah, so well, a lot of people don't know where it all started, like what like it's evolved a lot since the beginning. I know there's so I don't know how much press the person wants at this point, but there was this thing where we had Follow Friday, and then I guess they had block Saturday or something like that. What was it, James?
Yeah, so that was a Ratina or Aratina, depending on how you pronounce his name. It's actually a Ratina because it's a Ratina cage. Was tweeting on Block Saturday some of the people who were involved in FT bullies, so that's Free Thought Bullies. He was suggesting that people might want to block some of the people who were doing that, so he was using that hashtag to be sort of like a group or a shared tips of people who are worth blocking. And then I saw, what was it? It was Ratino and Hyperdeath were talking on, I can't remember if it was Butterflies and Wheels or Pharyngeula, about could that be automated? And at some point I had both of them on my blog, and I said, yeah, it could be. I've been looking at the Twitter API. I'd quite like to have a play with PHP. So I'll give it a go, trying to code something. I won't promise that it will work because I'm just learning PHP, just messing around with it and having a play, but I'll give it a go. And our main rationale was it'll really, really annoy the slime pit. And that was how it started.
Yeah, now it was automated for a while, and I think there was only one level, and the blocks weren't archived like they are now. Oh, great. just
What are you doing?
just a moment. So, James, do you want to tell what all the updates are?
Yeah, so it went through 3 major versions, I suppose. So the first version that we did it was all just one level. There was only everybody was shoved into one big group. That was when we were doing it with Ratino originally, and everyone was put into one level. People could sign up and they'd block all of those people. There wasn't any control over who you blocked or anything like that. And then we did a second version, which was more where it became involved with Atheism Plus. So we used the Atheism Plus forum to discuss development on the bot and people that were being attacked on Twitter and harassment, things like that. And we, I introduced a new updated version, which was 3 different levels. The idea of having people who are administered, you could add new people who are blocking, and so multiple people could add blockers as well as myself. Evolved from there a little bit. So the application itself, I suppose I haven't really even described what it does at the moment. You can sign on to the blockbot.com and you can authorize this application to block people on Twitter for you. There are 3 different levels. Level 1 meant to be the worst people. Level 2 are people that might be a bit more abusive but probably won't threaten you with death or anything like that. Level 3 are mainly just annoying people, really. People who chip away at you if you're trans or something like that. There are people who just annoy you with 101 questions. I suppose that'd be called the sea lions these days. Gamergate sea lions, people who just constantly jacking off. So you can choose either of those levels, and it will block people up to that level for you, assuming that you're not following them or if you unblock them. And the Twitter app has authority to add people to your block list then until you revoke it, or as I say, until you follow people or unblock them. And then it'll remove those people's ability to send you messages on Twitter.
So one of the questions that I was asking of Vivian was what their role in Blockbot was, and that the same could go for all of you. Vivian says that they come across a lot of trolls on Twitter. They add them to the bot to minimize the harm they can do. So can anybody add to Blockbot? Do you have to be a moderator or involved somehow?
There's basically 3 levels of, well, 4, I guess, of being able to interact with the Blockbot. Is that the admins can add blocks, and they can also add blockers. The blockers can't add blockers, but they can add blocks, right? And pretty much anyone who isn't actually blocked by the Blockbot can add reports to the Storify. So, those 3 groups have different permissions. But of course, there's a 4th group, people who are blocked by the blockbot can't add Storifys, because then we'd end up getting, troll reports constantly.
Yeah, so it's worth mentioning that everybody that gets added, we save reports on the reasons why they were added. So anybody that adds somebody has to add links to tweets for the reasons why they were added. And part of the reason that happened was because Tim Farley, Krelnick on Twitter, JREF guy, wrote a post criticising the bot because it didn't have any, this was the early version, didn't have any audit trail. There's no obvious reason why people have been added. He didn't understand why some of the people that are added were added. He didn't think they should be on there. So we added some of this documentation feature. So whenever anybody's added, it creates a Storify for their ID. So any reasons why they've been added are saved, and people can refer to that either to agree or disagree, or at least see the reasons why people were added to a particular level in the bot.
Yeah, before there really wasn't a good way to review, and we thought, that's a little bit of a problem, right? Every once in a really great while, one of the blockers would go a little extreme, and so now we have like, I think Obama was blocked for a while. It's like, what? Because there's different philosophies of why to block people. We don't have a rubric that we go by, and we actually think that's a good thing, because then we can use, our own discernment. We can make complex decisions instead of deciding, oh, if you say X, Y, Z words or something like that, we're going to block you. But then we needed some oversight, so we ended up, James started this really slick thing where when you block someone, you can add tweets to it. If somebody comes and asks me later, it's like, I just realized I was on the block bot. What the heck's going on? I can review the Storify and make a decision, and any blocker can override that. So it's easier to get off the bot than it is to get on it, actually. You just have to have one person say, yeah, that I don't agree with the block, and remove you.
Yeah, Vivian says that the Blockbot's automatic storifying of our reports has proven very useful for countering claims of irresponsible blocking, which is, I think, what you're saying there.
Yeah, and then sometimes people say, oh, this person is really great, they're a good guy, blah, 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 why are they on the bot, etc., so forth. And then you point them to the Storify and they go, oh, that's why. It's like, yeah, that's why they are on the bot, right? But one thing to say about blocking in general, and what the philosophy of blocking is that we try to, as much as we can, to stay away from this idea that we're somehow punishing someone by putting them on the bot. You think more of the utility, the practicality of the bot is like, would this person being on the block bot actually be useful to the people that use it? So, like, you might think, like, say, George Bush is a war criminal or something, and so they're bad, so we should put them on the block bot. Well, putting George Bush's, like, if he had a Twitter account, I don't even know if he does, on the block bot, Cheney's account on the block bot probably isn't going to actually be of any utility to our users, because, unless, we do have celebrities on the bot, though. But these are celebrities that actually troll people, that go out and, Alec Baldwin's on the frickin' bot, I'm sure. I didn't even check, but I can guess he is. Because, even though he's a celebrity, he does actively troll people on Twitter. He's like anybody else, right?
I would confirm that block.
Yeah, it's like, what's his name, Kincaid? What's, Mr. Death Camp guy? Yeah, he's a celebrity. He's on the bot. But, we're not going to go out and put, the president of Iran on the block bot. Sorry, unless they're actually trolling people.
Yeah, that's a good point about punishing people, because a lot of people claim being put on the bot is all sorts of things. I mean, I've been threatened to be sued with libel about, I think it's into double figures now, but a lot of people might threaten to take me to court, and nobody has yet, fortunately, which is a bit ridiculous over being blocked on Twitter, but people take it very seriously. But the idea is that people are being added to it. It shouldn't be any downside for them. All it means is they can't talk to people who they'd probably have a very unpleasant conversation with anyway. The people they're talking to wouldn't want to talk to them. They'd end up being acrimonious.
Yes.
We have had a few instances where people, maybe more within the community who've done or said something, and then it's should they be added to the bot? And I think I've established a bit of a double standard, which people call a double standard, but I think it's a fair standard, where if somebody is socially linked to the people using the bot, then it's totally different adding them to the block list than it is somebody outside. You can actually cut them off from some of their support, or be seen as a bit of a social exclusion being added to the bot. So we tend to be careful about adding people when they're part of that, but I'm sure Marion can talk about that in more detail.
Yeah, there's and that's the thing, people accuse us of all sorts of things, and in a way they think that our purpose is slightly different than it is. So it's kind of like, a lot of the criticisms that we get are kind of like criticizing Bjork's dress. Like, Bjork is not trying to do what you think she's trying to do if you're putting her on a worst dress list, okay? It's like my swan. We're a swan, okay? We're not. We're trying to. We are attempting to serve the community that has chosen us to help them be able to be on Twitter without getting harassed and without having to deal with as much annoyance as they would otherwise, right? And it's not for general consumption. Somebody who is, let's see, what if somebody really wouldn't probably be of any, the bot would not be of use to them. A trans exclusionary radical feminist is probably not going to use the bot because all their friends will be on it.
That is true.
And yet it is true that some of the feminists that are on that side of things do get amazing and horrible abuse from like MRAs and that sort of thing, and when they criticize us, it's like, how dare you put somebody on the bot for saying, for talking about biology, right? We're like, please, here's the code. Make your own and do the work to make your own. And if that helps you avoid people threatening you, we're not about that. If that helps you, do it. We'll set you up, right? We'll help you out. But I don't think anyone's really taken us up on it. There's been a lot of lists, as parody lists. I think I'm on about 7 or 8 of them. But the only one that actually blocks is Saul St. John's list, which he created in response to Randy's anti-GG blocker, which is not us. There's more than one blocker out there now. But that's the only one that I'm actually blocked on. All the rest are just lists of that don't do anything because nobody else has bothered doing any work to actually create blocks. Right.
On the chat room here, somebody wrote that they loved it when the anti-FTB crowd threatened to create their own block bot, and they got like 50 "yes, please do that" replies.
That's like, how would you feel if we love it? We love it. The whole point is that we're some people they just want to disengage on Twitter. And that's another thing. They think disengaging with certain people is disengaging with certain ideas, and that's not true. They'll accuse people who do point-by-point, destruction of their ideas on blogs and whatnot, and then say, how dare you, not listen to my comments. It's like, we're not a hug box. I mean, that's, you know, hug box. How dare you block me? Hug box. You know, but that's one of the questions, though, is if and I understand that worry, because especially on level 3, you know, it becomes a bit political. It's not about tone. It's not about somebody threatens anyone. It doesn't matter what they make a threat of bodily harm. They get on the bot regardless of if their views are really awesome. Hi, hun. But the you get up to level, you know, the level 3 or what have you, and you know, there's kind of differences of opinion. It's like, are we creating hug boxes? Like, we can't get away from the dominant opinion. It's like when somebody accused let's see, somebody give an example.
What?
An example of
Somebody's opinion. I mean, Vivian said that you know, more than 99.99% of Twitter remains open to somebody on level 1. So, you know, they're definitely not being silenced. There's no. That's one of the most common arguments, if you can call it that, against the block bot, is that by being added to it, you're being silenced. And there's no silencing going on. You know, it's not stopping your tweets being posted to your timeline. It's not stopping you talking to, let's say, a vast majority of the people on Twitter quite happily. People with the same opinion of those using the block bot will happily talk to you. There are always some people out there, but people that don't want to talk to you don't want to talk to you. It's tough luck.
Also, another feature that I think is awesome is it doesn't even necessarily stop you from being able to interact with people on the list, because the people that you, if for example you sign up for the block bot and you want to communicate with people that have been blocked, you can just go unblock them and continue to communicate with them even though you're signed up for the service. So there aren't even any really hard lines that like stop you from interacting with people, in addition to the whole that everybody that's blocked is a tiny percentage of all of Twitter, and the people that use the block bot is a tiny percentage of Twitter, and so it really is a sort of community thing. And maybe for some people they think it's a huge amount of people, but if you look at any context, it shrinks down very, very small. There was one thing that I wanted to mention, which was about the blocking celebrities. I've noticed people suggest celebrities to block that might be, you know, terrible people outside of the internet, that they do bad things or whatever. But what's the point of like adding them to the block bot if they have like an official account that does almost nothing? It's not that their account on Twitter is actually harassing people. They're just terrible people offline, and there's no point to add those people to the block bot because they're not actually doing anything. As an extension of what Marion was saying, it just seems pointless. So,
I was going to say the other thing about the other block bots. We should probably give a quick overview of what block bots are. The real ones, the ones that actually do things. There's blocktogether.org, which is created after the block bot. It's the second one ever created. In reality, it's the only other one, I suppose, in a way, because GG Auto Blocker, Randy's blocker for blocking Gamergate people, uses Blocktogether as the engine to actually block people. He creates a list of Gamergaters by using people who follow certain accounts on Gamergate, and then that blocks, I think it's a Randy eBooks account, it blocks all those people on there, and then she shares that block list through Blocktogether. So that's Blocktogether and the Blockbot are the only two ones I know of that actually really block accounts. Things like auto blockers built off of that. Other than that, there's some lists that don't really work. You know, things like Rich Sanderson's abusers. The guy who invented FD Bullies also invented his own Storyfly list of women abusers, and there's a level 1, 2, and 3 women abusers, I think. I'm not sure if he's still
I'm on that one.
Yeah, I'm pleased all of us on it, and so I hope Brianna's on it as well. But everybody who's blogs on FTB should be on it as well. That doesn't
I'm on
block it.
Andrea Jane's professional victims too. Or something like that.
Yeah. So there are a couple of systems that do it now, but I imagine with GG Auto Blocker there'll probably be a lot more coming because that's had a lot of press, and Randy's gone full time to be a anti-harassment person now. So I won't be surprised if we see a few more tools to combat harassment online going in there and appearing.
Cool.
You're not
Huh? I didn't know Randy actually is going full time. Is she working for Twitter then?
No, she's independent, so she got made redundant from her job, Kickstarter, which of course Gamergate said she was sacked, even though they made about 25% of their people redundant. But yeah, Randy's looking for money on her Patreon, not just to run the service that she runs, but also to be a full-time online investment person now.
A frozen peach right there.
Herself as well.
What a perfect question. Let's actually. I want to take that question from the kids' room, okay? Because we've been seeing a lot of conversation in the chat room. This is from the kids' room. Have you guys talked yet about accusations that BlockBot restricts free speech? Do you want to say anything about that?
Here you go.
It's a frozen
Okay, now go play with the frozen peach elsewhere, okay? Yeah, I had to bring my frozen peach. So yeah, the free speech claims is ridiculous. I mean, it's kind of weird that usually the most the most popular criticisms are the ones that have the most truth, but in this case, I don't think that's the case, because as people pointed out before, we're not stopping them from talking. And the bot does not suspend accounts. Okay, so even if you think that disallowing someone to use a platform is anti-free speech, we don't do that either. So it's really not a reasonable criticism.
Back to what you were discussing before, Vivian, they just added, the problem with auto blockers is that they're much more prone to false negatives. People have been caught by the GG auto blocker despite not actually being gamergaters. The BlockBot has far fewer such errors due to being run by humans instead of sourcing blockies from a script. While we have had to remove people from the BlockBot on occasion, it's very rare.
Yeah, I was going to say that the GG Auto, it's not the GG Auto blocker, actually slightly before that, there was a block together list going around that a lot of people like Ben Kuchera and I'm not a big gamer, but some of the sort of like top people, gaming people online were sharing with each other in desperation to block out the vast quantity of gamergaters who were taking over their timelines. And unfortunately that shared list had quite a lot of indie developers in, you know, trans developers and people of colour and things like that were in there because people just decide to block somebody just on a whim, and then if that list then gets shared and it starts accumulating everybody's personal blocks, it ended up with quite a few sort of marginalised indie game developers being blocked as part of a shared block list. So that wasn't the GG Auto blocker, it was something that was being used before that came along, but I think that was probably one of the rare examples where a shared block list probably wasn't a particularly good idea, and I think all of those gamer people ended up unblocking everyone. I think it was it Ben Kuchera, somebody asked me about an unblocker anyway, and the BlockBot, as part of the agreement with Twitter that we could actually run it, because they suspended us at one point, was that we provide a service so that you can unblock everybody on your account. So as well as the BlockBot, there is the unblocker, which will unblock potentially every block you've got on your account if you want to, or it'll block level 1, 2, or 3. So I think some of those people used the unblocker to remove every block that they had. So if we're going to steel man the argument, I think even there it doesn't impede free speech at all, but there are potential issues with shared block lists, certainly.
Yeah, I think she ended up creating a whitelist, right? A whitelist that she took some of them off then. Did that happen?
I was saying there was a list before GG Auto Blocker.
Oh no, there's Gigi Autobrocker, yeah, and then she created a whitelist to take off the ones that had automatically been put on the blocker.
Yeah. So yeah, Randy's got around it with a two-phase thing, hasn't she? Those people being added and a whitelist of people who aren't necessarily gamer gators who are following some other people. Like, well, it's not Summers now, is it? I can't remember what the seed accounts are. Is it Milo? Who else is it? It's part of the seed account. I'm not sure.
Milo and Roguestar and I don't know who else. Maybe that played dangerously guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he's something else.
A little bit of snark from the chat room here. I like this. I thought free speech meant that you were entitled to your own commercially broadcast TV show.
Yep.
And someone says that basically they're talking here about TERFs and MRAs. Basically, they argue that not listening to them is a violation of free speech. Yes.
Well, who's the worst group we've added, Marion? I'd vote for atheists that added to the block bot are the worst. Or Nick, have you got any groups you've had? For me personally, adding the atheists who were being a bit bigoted was worse. I mean, I got the best comment ever where somebody seriously said I was the worst atheist since Stalin.
Well, you know the worst people that I had to deal with. I had some anon accounts that I was blocking, and then Twitter created some sort of way to track when you made multiple accounts that they hadn't used previously, and so these accounts were getting suspended immediately upon being created. They called it, I didn't choose the name, but they called it the Trollocaust. And it got on the news and everything. There's all these trolls, their accounts were suspended, and then they made new accounts and they were immediately suspended, which had never happened before. Well, I happened to be on Twitter while this was happening, and somebody was making multiple accounts, and they were telling me they were making these accounts, so I was putting on the block bot immediately, because they were, part of a kind of LOL's troll group, the ones that go around being really, awful just for fun. For shits. And so I kept putting this account on the block bot the moment it was created, and then it got suspended the moment I blocked it, because that's just how time works. And it had nothing to do with me. But they got this idea that I was personally responsible for the Trollocaust, and I ended up getting trolled pretty badly. And it was actually kind of, I was kind of making a joke out of it for a while, but they crossed some lines, and it was really uncomfortable. They started mentioning my coworkers' names and that sort of thing, so I started taking it a little more seriously, because I was incensed. I was very angry at that point. It's like, you can send me pizzas, but you start mentioning other people around me, I get that's the end of it. So I ended up dealing with that situation in various ways I won't mention.
I don't really have a...
Who's the worst you had to deal with, Nick?
Honestly, I haven't had to deal with much. Maybe it's because I'm a white dude. Although I would guess that James working with the Blockbot a lot closer and longer than me. Plus, you also engage a lot more than I do. Me actively engaging with the people that are blocked, I tend not to engage people that I block directly. If ever it ever gets bad, I always go, hey, would somebody else look at this? I've interacted. Would you see if they're, or I think they might be eligible for blocking? But even when I took a day that I was feeling extra sassy and decided to interact with GamerGators, and predicted that if I stopped interacting with them, within a day or two they would all go away, which is exactly what happened. So there was a lot of people when I was directly engaging with them that would just call me an idiot or basically call me names, but didn't really have any points, and just wanted to be heavily in denialism about what's actually going on and what seems to be the focus of the majority of Gamergate and the things that happen surrounding it. And I didn't really believe it on some level until I did that, and so much of it became it's really about gaming journalism and getting that experience firsthand of there is all this horrible stuff going on that is related to what you're talking about and the movement that you are espousing, but all you want to talk about is this issue, which is a perfectly valid issue in actual evidenced instances, but it just gets problematic. But anyway, yeah, a day later it was all gone, and that's really the most that I've ever gotten. I haven't had anybody dox me or bring up family information or people close to me or anything like that. So I've been sort of lucky, but again, I think it's mostly just because I'm a white guy.
I asked Vivian if they had experienced any splashback from being involved with BB, and they said to a certain extent, when one of us makes a bad decision, people blame us all. Is there any risk to being involved in a group being associated with Blockbot like that?
Oh, yeah, sometimes there's some really contentious, political things that end up getting very personal, and that can be incredibly difficult to navigate. And that's the thing when we're talking about some of the kind of, ridiculous criticisms of the bot, like we're Stalin or Pol Pot or something, that we're centralizing censorship or something like that, which is actually the opposite. We're decentralized, moderation, because we're not oh boy, because we don't have my kids, they are not censored, but because we work for the community that signs up for our service, and Twitter exists outside of us completely. So we're actually decentralized moderation. We're not. If all of Twitter, say, decided to block all, suspend all people that talked about feminism, we'd be pretty upset, right? Because so many people use the service and it's such a large platform. And even though we said, well, that's not anti-free speech because you can still talk on other platforms without jackboots showing up, it'd at least be a valid thing. Is like that. Maybe that's not an okay thing. But if small groups decide within their communities, hey, we just don't want to talk about that anymore, or we don't want to be bothered by it. I don't want to hear the 385th time somebody says, mentions ask me a question that's inappropriate, right? I've blocked hundreds of people that have asked about, who made jokes about Twitter PTSD, right? So if you make a joke about Twitter PTSD, I'll probably just block you. I'll put you on the bot, right? But guess what? That's not like destroying your free speech. But what are I think it'd be good for us to acknowledge any of the valid criticisms. Like what are the actual problems with having a service like this?
Well, I think it's when it's somebody within the community gets blocked. That's the only one I can think of. I think is any valid. If it's suspended accounts, that would be valid. If people potentially lost their accounts or even went down for a few weeks while Twitter dealt with it, but that doesn't happen. And we've demonstrated that time and time again, although people still believe it does. But the only other thing is if people, within the group of people using the bot, one of them gets added to it, then real social censure to them and potentially cut off people that they could follow because they automatically block them. Can't think of anything else.
There was one other thing that I was thinking, which was intersectionality. I think is a really good thing, and I think it's something that we are conscious of and working on, including more people of color, more trans people, and also deferring to people with firsthand experience. If there's an issue with racism, you know, instead of just white people saying, well, this is how it works and this is what's going on, somebody, a person of color who is, you know, interested in one of the other blockers can weigh in and go, hey, this is actually what I think is going on. And taking that seriously and allowing that to change, you know, what happens. Granted, I think that we do well at that. I think that we could include more intersections, more people at different intersections, but I think that is a great focus for us to have, and I think that we have had it. It's just something that we could do better at.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're smarter than a piece of code, so we can make more, as I said, complex decisions than a piece of code can. But we, of course, come with our own biases, right? And because of the makeup of the blocking team, you know, there's some, there's some issues that tend to be maybe more focused upon than others, right? That we kind of block as we come across, you know, things, and so it kind of ends up being kind of centered around our person. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, I mean, we all come from our own perspective, and so it's that sometimes gets a little clashy and interesting, or if something's incredibly close to our heart, we might overreact, right? If we blocked everybody who committed a microaggression, we block everyone because we've all done that, right? So it's kind of this balance of taking things seriously and providing a good service, and, you know, being nuanced about how we go about doing things.
Yeah, and one of the things about microaggressions especially is that one of their defining characteristics is that they're an unconscious thing. It's a whole different situation if a microaggression is pointed out and then that person turns around and gets upset and says, well, no, that's not what I meant, or whatever. It's not about what was meant or what was intended, because it's a microaggression and it's generally not a conscious thing. It's just sort of what our culture has taught someone and how they you know, do treat people of color, or people who are do not fall within the gender binary, or even on that spectrum or whatever. So it's not reasonable to block every single microaggression. There's just no way, and everybody would look at us like we were crazy if we tried to do that, because you're right, we would just block everyone on Twitter.
Exactly. Like even like I've been trying to not use the word like crazy and stupid and things like that, because it is a microaggression. Like if we blocked everyone who did that, you know, at some point you have to think of the egregiousness of and the severity and the repetition, right? I've blocked accounts where all they do is call people stupid and crazy. Right?
Something from Vivian here. I was asking about challenges with being involved in BlockBot, and it kind of went off to another topic. Vivian says that one of the things they have to deal with is getting triggered. The bigotry can get exhausting to deal with. What do you guys do for self-care, for getting through this and dealing with all this slime that you have to deal with?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. We've had some blockers who've left because it's just been too unpleasant. You know, they get targeted. Certainly one person in particular who joined fairly early on, you know, both her and me are both quite abrasive people who don't back down and do engage with some of the people who are blocked. You know, I don't get anywhere near as much abuse as she did. She got quite a concerted campaign of harassment from fellow atheists, as I say. That's why part of the reason why I think the atheists were the worst group that we added, because they pretty much targeted her for pretty serious harassment as a result of being a blocker, and nowhere near as much for me. But in terms of self-care,
they say that there are times when They say there are times when I've had to hand off work on botting a den of bigots to another blocker for the sake of my own health.
Yeah, so
That's
we need the thing we need to be careful of bringing new people on is let them know that it can be quite a toll on your mental health.
that's absolutely been a valid thing that we have done, and most often somebody's happy to step in and start taking over the blocking. One thing that I've done my best to do is, and I actually had a specific experience with Vivian. I think it was a couple weeks ago now, where and this actually ties into something that Marion was talking about, where instead of blocking for microaggressions or individual things like that, taking into account repetitiveness, invasiveness, and unwillingness to consider other opinions. There was somebody that interacted with Vivian that I don't remember. I think it was about Gamergate, but I sort of joined the conversation, and Vivian sort of dropped off for the most part, and I started engaging with them and pointing out, hey, this is considering things in this way or sexist, using terms like this, it comes across poorly, and I believe it was a gentleman. I don't know if he was a person of color or not. I don't remember his avatar, but he was definitely a gentleman, and despite the there was a few times where he got his hackles raised and was sort of defensive about the way that Vivian or I were saying things, but then I would just take a few tweets and explain, hey, this is what we meant, or this is what this is where we were having a misunderstanding or whatever else. And by the end of this 20 or 30 tweets, he actually ended up following me on Twitter, and was happy about how the conversation had gone, and felt great. At least it seemed to me. So that was a time where I was happy to sort of pick off this person that was being aggressive at one of my fellow blockers, and didn't end up blocking them because they really honestly did want to learn, and I had the energy and interest in doing that at the time. What's one of the things I've actually heard a lot is, if you have I engage when I have the time to do so and the energy, because it keeps people who are trolling, or even if they're just asking questions, it helps them not bring those questions to people who aren't up for it or aren't up for handling it at the same time. It allows me to sort of take that over.
Vivian asked me to provide a specific example. There is a trigger warning for this for trans misogyny, so if anyone out there is watching and needs to pause it for just a moment, we'll give you that time. So Vivian asked me to say, a recent example was the cock or no cock thing. A bunch of trans misogynists thought it would be funny to post pornographic photos of women and have others guess whether or not they're trans. I was only able to work through 3 hours worth of tweets on that hashtag before I had to stop. So I guess a really great example of why BlockBot is awesome, and also how much effort it takes for blockers to sometimes take part in this work.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I'd say it's a lot worse than I thought it was going to be when I was first asked to be a blocker. What, 2 years ago? I don't know, a while ago, a long time ago. I know it's going to be kind of harsh, but I think some of the things that affected. I mean, I don't even. This is what's terrible. You get into this mindset where you can't even discuss what bothers you because you know it might be used. I know that's kind of awful, but that's kind of where you end up. But you have the Lowe's trolls who will post shock images, and I've seen pictures. There's some of those pictures I still think about, and because that's normal. Most people, if they see something really, really terrible, it affects them. That's how most people's psychology works. And some of the stuff that they were posting in order to, upset people, were pretty terrible. And any given time, I can just spend hours just following follows and blocking Lulz Trolls accounts if I wanted to. But every once in a while, you get so far, and it's like, I can't look at this anymore. I can't think about this anymore. It's just too terrible.
Okay,
and I'm
I
not
pulled out
going
a
to
call
describe
for
those images.
Thank you.
But they're bad. They're really, really bad. Think about the worst thing you can think of, and then think of it 10 times worse, and they're bad, and they're real. Right? And that's what they put up there.
So I put out a call to the Frangula chats that it was time for first and last call for questions. I got engaged in the panel, so I apologize. We're down to about 5 minutes. Normally I'd say we're done. So unless we get any questions that come in from the Frangula chat, I'm asking you guys for closing comments.
I was just going to add, when it comes to tools to deal, really I think the one that's used most often is disengaging. If you can't take it, stepping away, whether that's stepping away from blocking and interacting with the people, reading and interacting with the people that are trolling or abusing, or just stepping away from Twitter completely for hours or a day or two or a week or however long it takes. That is easily the most powerful tool for sort of being able to come back and handle it again and continue blocking or whatever else that you do. So.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think if you're getting really bad harassment, probably the best thing to do is disable your account for a day, a couple of days. They forget about you and they move on to somebody else. Whereas there are instances where people will follow you for longer than a short period of time. Unfortunately, there are some harassment campaigns, things like FT Bullies, which was the genesis of the Blockbot, where people are a bit more motivated to carry on for all eternity, it seems. But for the most part, if you get a pile-on of people on Twitter, then just disable your account for a bit and walk away and come back, and probably have dissipated after a day or so. So that's always a good thing to try.
Yeah, I think it's as for the in general about dealing with internet harassment and discussing it is that a lot of times we want to put these groups of trolls, of harassers, and stalkers all kind of in the same category, and we talk about it all at once. But it's very, very different. And after being the person that goes through people's mentions, and being the person that kind of ends up knowing about the different troll groups, right? That they're incredibly different than one another, and many situations can be dealt with by stepping back for a while because people just want their attention grabbers, the kind of classic trolls. But we also deal with people who are honest to God stalkers. Trying to avoid them doesn't work. It just makes them mad, right? Not all trolls are created equal. Some of them are not just attention grabbers and pranksters, and just people want to get a rise out of somebody else. We deal with kind of all sorts. And you get to the point where you try to get an intuition for which is which, right? And we try to use the service to help people avoid all of them, right? From people who are just being annoying or are a little too entitled to a conversation, and people who are actually very, very dangerous.
And Vivian's closing comment is that they appreciate being able to work with you all on the bot.
Ah.
So yay! Let's end on a happy note.
Stupendous.
Okay, we have to go. We're out of time. This panel generated a lot of interest in the chat room and on Twitter and everywhere. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and for being part of Free Thought Blog's FTBCon. Hopefully, we'll have you back next year.
Excellent.
All right. And for everyone who's watching, next up in just a moment here, if not starting already, we have a panel on, watch me delay here, fundraising for a secular cause because it takes money to change the world. So stick around for that and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Hey, where's the stop broadcast button?